Hello, this is the video for future perfect. Future perfect. What is that? Why is it called perfect? Well, first of all, always try to remember what you learned before that might help you to learn some new grammar. The name of this verb tense, future perfect, looks similar to present perfect, which you've studied a lot. So you can figure out that there will be some similarities. Okay, here I'm trying to show you a diagram that helps us compare present perfect and future perfect. So this is a timeline. Do you remember with present perfect we talked a lot about the connection to now, the connection from past to present, right? Something earlier connects to the present. So if you take that same idea of connection and you just move it all into the future, it's pretty much the same idea with future perfect. So we're thinking now about the future. We're thinking about a specific future time that's represented by this orange bar. But not only that, we're also thinking about some action in the future that will connect. Okay, so we're thinking about two different future times. First of all, the form is not difficult. Just like present perfect, part of the helping verb uses have, and the main verb is past participle. Okay, so future perfect form is will plus have plus main verb past participle. This have does not change. It's base form, so it never turns into has. Okay, it's always have. Maybe it's possible to also use be going to, but I would say it's probably rare because then the verb would be so long. Why don't you just focus on learning will and have and past participle? So here are some really basic examples. I will have finished, he will have finished, we will have graduated, she will have graduated. That's not difficult. That's the form. But look at this little note over here. This is correct form, but I don't think those are good sentences. We would not make a sentence like this with no context. What I mean by context is time words to show that we are talking about two future times. Okay, you'll see what I mean as we keep going. Okay, what about the meaning? I think the meaning is a little tricky. I think it's not super clear, not easy to understand right away. An action will happen before another future time. Again, I hope this time picture helps you. In practical terms, this often means that we want to talk about a goal for the future or maybe a deadline for the future. You know this word deadline, right? Like when something is due. Maybe you have homework. You have a deadline. That means you have to submit your homework by the deadline or before the deadline. When we pay bills, we have a deadline, right? We have a due date for our rent or our telephone bill or the electric bill. The goal or the deadline is the second future time. And the verb that happens before that will be the verb in future perfect. So where I have this green arrow, that's the verb that we're going to write about in future perfect. Okay, we need some examples, right? The first one is about paying for a car, and the second one is about graduation. So I guess we could say those are both goals. Maybe paying for the car is also a deadline, okay? He has a 3-year car loan. He has been paying for 2 years. He will finish in 1 year. Okay, you understand his situation, right? So here's how we can use future perfect with the blue verb. He will have made his final payment by next year. He must finish paying by that time. Is it okay if he finishes later? No. Is it okay if he finishes before? Yes, right? Okay, she's studying for her master's degree. She started 2 years ago. She will finish next semester, or maybe the semester after that. Sorry, do you see my typo? There's an extra the. Okay, don't pay attention to that. Here's future perfect. She will have graduated by next year. Have you noticed the important time word? What is it? It's this preposition by. By next year. By next year. By is very, very common with future perfect. Okay, did you notice the time words? Here it is again. He will have made his final payment by next year. Big letters and red color, right? She will have graduated by next year. The preposition by is the most common. You can use by with a date, a day, a month, a year. In, on, and at are also possible, but I would just recommend just learn by with future perfect. That's enough. So I can make some phrases like by August 1st, or by Sunday, or by September, or by 2025. Okay? What about time clauses? Yes, we also make sentences with future perfect and time clauses. Again, you can use your prior knowledge because you can use the same rules that you learned about other time clauses. Stop and think, what do you already know about time clauses in general? You can pause the video. You can write them down, or you can check your textbook if you need to. I'm going to move to the next slide, and it says, do you remember these things about time clauses? The time clause has a subordinator and a subject and a verb. Time clause must connect to a main clause, right? Because a time clause is a dependent clause, right? And I think you know the rule about the comma. Use a comma between clauses only when the sentence begins with the time clause. Okay, so those are things that we've studied about, all time clauses. What is specific to these time clauses when I use future perfect? So there's one more rule to remember. This is an old rule. When you learned about future time clauses, use simple present in the time clause. Simple present in the time clause. Even though the action is future, we put the verb in simple present. In other words, do not use a future verb in the time clause. The time clause uses simple present. The main clause uses future perfect. Okay? We need some examples. But first, okay, here's a diagram. All right, so here's our time. We are speaking now about the future. The time clause talks about the second future action up here with the orange bar. The main clause talks about the first action, which will be completed before the second action. So if you're hoping to graduate in 2024, that would be this orange bar, 2024. That's your goal or your deadline. And the action that you want to complete is graduate, right here. So you could start your sentence, I will have graduated by 2024. So you can represent the second future time just with a phrase, but you could also do it with a time clause. Okay, so let's get some examples now. The subordinator that you're going to use is by the time. By the time. Those three words together. So we use by with a phrase, okay, like by September or by 2 o'clock. But when we make a time clause, we have to use by the time. It's also possible to use before or when, but let's keep our life simple. Just learn by the time for now because that's the best one. Here are some examples. You see the colors. I put red for the subordinator. I put green for the verb, and look, this is the verb in the time clause. It's simple present. I underlined the time clause. And then in the main clause, the purple verb is the one in future perfect. Okay? Do you understand these examples? By the time you finish the ESL program, your English will have improved significantly. By the time I retire, I will have worked here at St. Louis Community College for more than 30 years. You will have learned about many types of dependent clauses by the time you finish Grammar 2. So you can put your time clause at the beginning or at the end of the sentence. Okay, I just heard a sobering example. That means serious and sad, bad news. I'm making this video at the time of the coronavirus pandemic. And I heard about some research information on TV. This is not the worst case scenario. This is the midline projection based on research from the University of Washington in Seattle. So here's one example of future perfect. It's about the state of Illinois. By August 2020. Okay, so I'm making this video on March 28th. March. Okay, and tomorrow, in 2 days, we're going to start our online work, right? So right now it's March, but this research gives scientific prediction for August. By August 2020, 8,114 people will have died from COVID-19 only in the state of Illinois. Okay, you want to write your own examples. Maybe your examples can be more positive. You can think about deadlines, like paying bills, submitting applications, paying taxes. You can think about goals that you have or people you know might have. These are some examples of goals. Remember, when you write your sentence, you want to use by with a specific time. That would be a phrase. Or use a time clause with by the time. This verb tense is not very common. So when you listen to conversations in English, you probably don't hear it very often, but sometimes we need it. And if you know how to use this verb tense correctly, that is very impressive. So try some examples.